Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the THS Tempest and looked out at the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was huge, almost 2 kilometers long, and covered with weapons that no human had ever used in real battle. Before, he had been chosen to command this vessel because he was the best captain in the Terran Federation fleet, but even he felt nervous about what they were about to do. Admiral Lisa Carter stood beside him, holding a datapad with their mission. Details. She was a tough woman who had fought in 3 different wars against alien species, but her face looked worried today. The Zephyrian Empire had declared war on all human colonies just 2 weeks ago. They thought humans were weak and stupid because humans had only been traveling in space for about 50 years, while the Zephyrians had been ruling this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. The Zephyrians had already attacked and destroyed 2 human colonies. Their ships were made from some kind of crystal material that could deflect most energy weapons. Their own weapons fired pure energy beams that could cut through normal human ship armor like it was paper. Every human fleet that had fought them so far had been completely destroyed, but the humans had been working on something special. The Hurricane-class battleship was completely different from any other ship design in the galaxy. Instead of trying to copy alien technology, human engineers had decided to use what humans were already good at. They were good at building things that could take damage and keep working. They were good at making weapons that hit really hard. Commander Amy Brooks sat at the tactical station running tests on all the ship weapons. She was young but very smart about how weapons worked. The main weapon system was called the Kinetic Storm Array. While most aliens used energy weapons that shot beams of light or plasma, humans had built something that shot solid metal objects. At incredible speeds, the weapon could fire thousands of tungsten rods, each about the size of a baseball bat. These rods could be accelerated to about 12% of the speed of light using magnetic fields. When they hit something, they would punch right through it and explode out the other side. The alien crystal armor that deflected energy beams would shatter like glass when hit by these metal projectiles. Admiral Carter handed the datapad to Morrison. Their target was the Kepler 442 system, where a group of 12 Zephyrian warships had been attacking human cargo ships. The aliens thought they were safe because no human military ship had ever been able to match their firepower. They were wrong. The Tempest had been built in secret at Luna Station above Earth's moon. The project had taken 5 years and used resources from all over human space. Every human colony had contributed something to make this ship possible. The hull was made from steel and titanium alloys that humans had been perfecting for centuries. The engines were fusion reactors that could produce more power than entire cities used. Chief Engineer Paul Davis called out from his station that all systems were ready for departure. He was an older man who had spent 30 years working on spacecraft. Engines. He understood better than anyone how the Hurricane-class ships were different from normal vessels. Most alien ships were built to be efficient and elegant. The Tempest was built to be tough and deadly. The ship's artificial intelligence system was also purely human design. Instead of trying to think like aliens, it was programmed to think like human military commanders. It could process battle information and suggest tactics that would surprise enemies who expected humans to fight like other species. Lieutenant Ben Rogers was at the weapons control station, checking the targeting systems. He had trained for 2 years just to learn how to operate the Kinetic Storm Array. The weapon was so powerful that firing it at full capacity could actually push the entire ship backward unless the engines compensated. No other species had ever built weapons that generated that much recoil. Intelligence Officer Rachel Kim reported that Zephyrian communications were full of messages about how easy it would be to crush the remaining human forces. They had studied human military capabilities and decided that human weapons were too primitive to threaten their crystal ships. The Zephyrians had never encountered kinetic weapons that moved at relativistic speeds. Morrison looked around at his crew. These were all experienced officers who had volunteered for what everyone knew was probably a suicide mission. If the Tempest failed, there would be no other ships like it. The resources to build even one Hurricane-class battleship had nearly bankrupted several human colonies. Admiral Carter gave Morrison his final orders. They were to proceed to Kepler 442 and engage the Zephyrian fleet. If possible, they should try to capture one enemy ship intact so human scientists could study their technology. But the primary mission was to prove that humans could fight back against superior alien forces. The Tempest began moving away from Luna Station using its massive ion drives. The ship accelerated slowly at first, but built up speed as it headed toward the outer edge of the solar system, where it could safely engage its faster-than-light drive. Other ships at the station watched it go, knowing they might never see it return not. As they traveled toward the jump point, Commander Brooks continued running weapons tests. The kinetic storm array had enough ammunition for about 6 major battles. Each tungsten rod cost more than most people earned in a year, but they had the stopping power to destroy ships much larger than themselves. Morrison stood on the bridge and thought about what they were about to attempt. Humans had never been the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy, but they had something that many alien civilizations seemed to have lost over thousands of years of comfortable living. They had the willingness to take enormous risks and the ability to build weapons that prioritized destructive power over elegance. The Tempest reached the jump point and engaged its faster-than-light drive. The stars outside shifted and blurred as the ship entered hyperspace. In a few hours, they would arrive at Kepler 442 and find out whether human engineering could match alien superiority. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones everyone underestimates. The Tempest dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and immediately began scanning for enemy ships. Commander Brooks studied her sensor displays and counted 12 Zephyrian warships arranged in a perfect formation near the system's main shipping lane. The alien vessels looked like giant crystals floating in space, their surfaces reflecting starlight in beautiful patterns that hid their deadly nature. Commander Crickstall stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human ship appear. On his screens, he had been fighting battles across the galaxy for over 200 years and had never lost a single engagement. The human vessel looked strange to him, more like a mobile factory than a proper warship. It was covered in odd angles and weapon mounts that seemed randomly placed rather than following elegant design principles. Captain Morrison ordered his ship to move closer to the Zephyrian formation while keeping their weapons powered down. He wanted to get within optimal firing range before revealing the Tempest's true capabilities. The alien ships made no move to attack, apparently confident that one human vessel posed no threat to an entire battle group. Crickstall activated his communication system and sent a message to the human ship. His voice was transmitted across space in perfect English, which he had learned specifically for dealing with human prisoners and surrender negotiations. He demanded that the Tempest immediately lower its shields and prepare to be boarded by Zephyrian Marines who would take the crew prisoner. Morrison received the alien commander's message and looked around at his bridge crew. Lieutenant Rogers had his hands ready over the weapons controls. Commander Brooks was calculating firing solutions for all 12 enemy ships. Chief Engineer Davis reported that the fusion reactors were running at full power and ready to channel massive energy into the weapon systems. The captain opened a communication channel back to the Zephyrian flagship. His response was brief and delivered in a calm voice that gave no hint of what was about to happen. He simply said that the Terran Federation did not recognize Zephyrian authority over human ships, and that they would not surrender under any circumstances. Krikstal was surprised by the humans' refusal to submit. He had studied reports from previous battles where human ships had been easily destroyed by Zephyrian energy weapons. The crystal armor used by his fleet had been perfected over millennia to deflect or absorb any known form of energy attack. He was curious to see what primitive kinetic weapons the humans thought could penetrate such advanced defenses. Morrison gave the order to attack. Lieutenant Rogers activated the kinetic storm array and targeted the center of the enemy formation. The weapon system came online with a deep humming sound that vibrated through the entire ship. Thousands of tungsten rods were loaded into magnetic acceleration tubes and prepared for launch. The first barrage fired in complete silence. There was no visible beam or projectile trail, just a brief flicker of energy from the Tempest's weapon ports. The tungsten rods accelerated to 12% of light speed in less than 2 seconds, crossing the distance between the ships almost instantaneously. Krikstal had barely enough time to register the attack on his sensors before the projectiles struck his formation. The crystal armor that had protected Zephyrian ships for thousands of years shattered like glass under the kinetic impact. The tungsten rods punched completely through the alien hulls and continued traveling through space, some of them hitting multiple ships in a single shot. 3 Zephyrian vessels were destroyed in the first volley. Their crystal structures cracked and broke apart, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. The surviving ships tried to return fire with their energy weapons, but the Tempest was already maneuvering to avoid their predictable targeting patterns. Commander Brooks had studied alien battle tactics and knew that most species fought in rigid formations using established procedures that had worked for centuries. Humans had no such traditions to limit their thinking. She recommended that Morrison use hit-and-run tactics, firing from unexpected angles and changing course constantly. To avoid enemy retaliation, the second barrage from the kinetic storm array destroyed 4 more Zephyrian ships. The tungsten rods moved too fast for alien point defense systems to intercept. Each projectile carried so much kinetic energy that even a glancing hit could cause catastrophic structural damage to the crystal hulls. Krikstal watched in horror as his battle group was systematically destroyed by weapons he had never encountered before. His own flagship was damaged, but still functional, though most of his escort vessels were now floating wreckage. He had fought dozens of different alien species, and none of them had ever used kinetic weapons at such incredible velocities. Remaining Zephyrian ships tried to retreat, but the Tempest was faster and more maneuverable than they expected. Morrison ordered his crew to pursue the fleeing aliens and finish the battle. Only one enemy vessel managed to escape the engagement, and it was badly damaged with its crystal armor cracked in multiple places. Lieutenant Rogers reported that the kinetic storm array had used only 30% of its ammunition capacity. During the entire battle, the weapon system was designed to sustain much longer engagements against larger enemy forces. Commander Brooks analyzed the battle data and confirmed that human kinetic weapons were completely effective against alien crystal armor technology. The surviving Zephyrian ship broadcast an emergency message across subspace communication networks. The transmission was intercepted by monitoring stations throughout the galaxy and quickly spread to every major alien civilization. The message was simple, but carried implications that would change everything about how aliens viewed humanity. Zephyrian Commander reported that humans possessed weapons that could ignore all known defensive systems. He described the human attack as unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The tungsten projectiles moved so fast that they seemed to appear and disappear instantly, leaving only destruction in their wake. Intelligence Officer Kim monitored alien communication channels and reported that news of the battle was already reaching other species. Many alien commanders were requesting detailed information about human kinetic weapons. Some civilizations were beginning to reconsider their previous assessments of human military capabilities. Morrison ordered his crew to collect data from the destroyed Zephyrian ships. The wreckage would provide valuable intelligence about alien technology and construction methods. More importantly, the battle had proven that Hurricane-class battleships could defeat superior alien forces through the application of overwhelming kinetic firepower. The Tempest set course for its next patrol area, leaving behind a debris field. That marked the end of Zephyrian confidence in their military superiority. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans fought differently than other species, and that difference made them extremely dangerous enemies. News of the Kepler 442 battle spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The surviving Zephyrian ship had broadcast detailed sensor readings of the engagement, and within hours, every major alien civilization knew that humans possessed weapons capable of destroying crystal armor that had been considered impenetrable for thousands of years. Representative Veltar of the crystalline hegemony called for an emergency session of the Altarian Council. The council was made up of 12 different alien species who had maintained peace and order in this region of the galaxy for over 500 years. They met in a massive space station that orbited a neutral star system, far from any single species territory. Veltar stood before the assembled representatives and activated a holographic display showing the battle. Data from Kepler 442. Images were disturbing to beings who had grown accustomed to civilized warfare conducted with energy weapons at long range. The human kinetic projectiles had literally torn the Zephyrian ships apart, leaving jagged holes where elegant crystal structures had once been. The Altarian representative asked how such primitive beings could have developed weapons that violated several interstellar treaties. The Galactic Weapons Convention specifically prohibited kinetic projectiles moving faster than 5% of light speed because they were considered too destructive for civilized combat. Humans had apparently ignored these restrictions completely. On Earth, President Karen Mitchell sat in her office reading reports from intelligence services across human space. Every alien government that maintained diplomatic relations with humanity had sent formal protests about the Tempest's weapons. They claimed that human kinetic technology represented a threat to galactic stability and demanded immediate inspections of all human military facilities. Mitchell called a meeting of her senior advisors and military commanders. Admiral Carter attended via secure communication link from her headquarters on Mars. The admiral reported that construction of additional Hurricane-class battleships was proceeding ahead of schedule, with 3 more vessels expected to be completed. Within 6 months, the president decided that humanity would not submit to alien oversight of their military technology. She drafted a response to the Galactic Council that was broadcast across all diplomatic channels. Her message was clear and direct, stating that Earth recognized no authority higher than its own government when it came to defending human colonies and citizens. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison and the Tempest had been reassigned to patrol the outer rim of human space. Intelligence reports indicated that several alien battle fleets were gathering near the borders of Terran Federation territory. The aliens were apparently planning some kind of coordinated response to the human threat. Chief Engineer Davis worked around the clock to optimize the ship's performance based on data collected from the first battle. He discovered that the Hurricane-class design had been built with much larger safety margins than necessary. The fusion reactors could operate at dangerous overload levels that would destroy more delicate alien power systems. But human engineering was robust enough to handle the stress. Commander Brooks spent her time analyzing alien fleet movements and tactical patterns. She noticed that most alien species had not fought a real war in decades or even centuries. Their military forces were designed more for showing strength than for actual combat. Humans, on the other hand, had been fighting wars continuously throughout. Their history understood that survival meant being willing to take risks that others would consider insane. Intelligence Officer Kim intercepted communications between different alien governments and discovered something alarming. 6 major civilizations were forming an alliance specifically designed to contain human expansion. They called themselves the Stability Pact and claimed their goal was to preserve galactic peace by preventing humans from spreading their destructive technology. The pact included the Zephyrian Empire, the Crystalline Hegemony, the Altarian Council, the Silicon Collective, the Energy Beings of Proxima, and the Machine Intelligence Network. Together, they controlled over half the galaxy and commanded thousands of warships. They were planning the largest military operation in galactic history, with the sole purpose of forcing humanity to accept restrictions on their weapons technology. President Mitchell received a formal ultimatum from the Stability Pact delivered through diplomatic channels. The aliens demanded the humans immediately cease all production of kinetic weapons, submit to technological inspections, and agree to permanent monitoring of their military activities. If humanity refused, the pact would consider it an act of aggression against the entire galaxy. The president convened an emergency session of the Terran Federation Congress to discuss the alien ultimatum. Representatives from every human colony participated via subspace communication. The debate was brief and unanimous. Humanity would not surrender their right to defend themselves, regardless of the consequences. Admiral Carter began mobilizing every available human warship for what appeared to be an inevitable conflict. The Terran Defense Fleet consisted of 47 vessels of various classes, including the Tempest and 2 prototype Hurricane-class ships that were still undergoing final testing. Against thousands of alien warships, the human fleet seemed hopelessly outnumbered, but humans had advantages that the aliens did not understand. Human ships were built to take damage and keep fighting. Human crews were trained to think creatively, under pressure, and adapt to unexpected situations. Most importantly, humans had weapons that could destroy enemy vessels with a single hit, while alien energy weapons required sustained fire to penetrate human armor. Chief Davis reported that he had found ways to increase the Tempest's firepower by channeling additional power from the life support systems. During battle, the crew could survive on emergency backup systems, while the main reactors fed power directly to the kinetic storm array. This would allow the weapon to fire continuously for much longer periods. Morrison looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity had bitten off more than they could chew. Fighting one alien species was manageable, but taking on half the galaxy seemed like suicide. Then again, humans had survived ice ages, world wars, and the challenges of interstellar colonization by refusing to give up when the odds were against them. The Tempest received new orders to rendezvous with the main human fleet at the edge of Terran space. The Stability Pact Armada was already moving toward human territory, and the greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. Humanity would either prove they deserved a place among the stars, or they would be crushed by forces too powerful to resist. The combined alien armada arrived at the edge of human space like a storm cloud blocking out the stars. Supreme Commander Zarkoth stood on the bridge of his massive dreadnought and counted over 800 warships from 6 different civilizations. The fleet stretched across millions of kilometers, representing the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Carter watched the enemy approach on her tactical displays from the bridge of her flagship. The Human Defense Fleet consisted of only 47 ships, including the Tempest and 2 other Hurricane-class battleships that had been rushed into service. The odds were overwhelming, but Carter had studied human military history and knew that desperate situations often brought out the best in her species. Captain Morrison received his final orders as the alien fleet moved into attack formation. The human strategy was simple but risky. Instead of trying to match the aliens in a traditional fleet engagement, they would use hit-and-run tactics designed to cause maximum damage while avoiding prolonged combat. Each human ship would target specific enemy vessels and then retreat. Before the aliens could coordinate an effective response, Supreme Commander Zarkov opened a communication channel to the human fleet and offered them one last chance to surrender. His voice carried the authority of 6 civilizations, as he promised that humanity would be treated fairly if they agreed to technological restrictions and permanent oversight. The alternative, he warned, was complete destruction. Admiral Carter responded for the entire human fleet. Her message was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear it. She stated that humans had never surrendered to superior forces in their entire history, and they were not going to start now. The Terran Federation would fight to defend its right to exist as a free and independent civilization. The battle began when the Tempest fired the first shot. Lieutenant Rogers had targeted the alien flagship with a full barrage from the kinetic storm array. Thousands of tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds and crossed the distance between fleets in seconds. The alien dreadnought's shields flared and collapsed under the kinetic impact, and secondary explosions began tearing the massive ship apart. Zarkov barely had time to order his fleet to return fire before his own ship was crippled. The bridge filled with smoke and sparks as critical systems failed throughout the vessel. He had commanded fleets for over 300 years and had never experienced weapons that could cause such devastating damage so quickly. The human fleet scattered in all directions as planned, making it impossible for the aliens to concentrate their fire. Each Hurricane-class battleship carved through enemy formations like ancient warriors wielding invisible swords. Their kinetic weapons ignored energy shields and armor that had protected alien ships for millennia. Commander Brooks coordinated the Tempest's attack patterns from her tactical station. She had studied the formation preferences of each alien species and knew how to exploit their weaknesses. The crystalline hegemony ships were beautiful but brittle. A silicon collective. Vessels were heavily armed but slow to maneuver. The energy beings relied too much on their shields and forgot that kinetic weapons could punch right through them. Chief Engineer Davis pushed the ship's reactors beyond their design limits to provide maximum power to the weapon systems. Alarms sounded throughout the engineering section as temperatures and radiation levels climbed to dangerous levels. Human ships were built to handle abuse that would destroy more elegant alien designs, and Davis was determined to prove that human engineering could outperform anything the galaxy had to offer. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Hughes led boarding parties against alien ships that had been disabled by kinetic strikes. His Marines moved through enemy vessels with a speed and ferocity that terrified alien crews who had never experienced close-quarters combat. Humans fought like they had evolved for war, which in many ways they had. The alien fleet tried to adapt to human tactics, but found themselves constantly outmaneuvered. Their commanders had been trained in civilized warfare, where battles followed established patterns and rules. Humans ignored all conventions and attacked from unexpected directions, using weapons that should not have existed. Intelligence Officer Kim monitored alien communications and reported that panic was spreading through their ranks. Many alien captains were requesting permission to retreat, but their commanders ordered them to maintain formation and continue the attack. The Stability Pact had staked its reputation on defeating humanity, and failure was not considered an option. Morrison ordered the Tempest to focus its fire on the largest enemy ships. Each kinetic barrage could destroy or cripple vessels that had taken decades to build and cost more resources than entire human colonies. The psychological impact on alien crews was as devastating as the physical damage to their ship's dot. As the battle reached its peak, Davis reported that the ship's reactors were approaching critical overload. Morrison made the decision to channel all available power into the weapon systems for one massive attack. The Tempest's entire hull vibrated as enormous amounts of energy flowed through the kinetic storm array. The resulting barrage was unlike anything seen before in galactic warfare. The weapon fired continuously for 30 seconds, launching tungsten rods at a rate that created visible streams of projectiles racing across space. The alien formation dissolved as ship after ship exploded or broke apart under the sustained kinetic bombardment. Supreme Commander Zarkoth watched his fleet disintegrate and finally gave the order to retreat. The Stability Pact had lost over half their ships and gained nothing in return. The surviving vessels fled toward their home systems, broadcasting warnings about human military capabilities across the galaxy. Admiral Carter surveyed the battlefield and counted the cost of victory. The human fleet had lost 12 ships and suffered damage to most of the survivors. But they had proven that superior numbers and technology meant nothing when facing an enemy willing to fight without limits or restrictions. The Tempest's crew worked to repair battle damage as they watched the alien fleet disappear into hyperspace. They had won the greatest battle in human history, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy now understood that humanity was a force that demanded respect, and the political landscape would never be the same again. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than the retreating alien ships could carry it. Within days, every major civilization knew that the mighty Stability Pact had been defeated by a species that most had considered primitive and insignificant. The political structure that had maintained order for centuries began to crumble as smaller species questioned whether they still needed protection from their former overlords. Captain Morrison found himself promoted to admiral and assigned to oversee the construction of an entire Hurricane-class fleet. The shipyards above Luna, Mars, and throughout the asteroid belt worked around the clock to produce vessels that had redefined what naval warfare meant. Each new ship incorporated improvements learned from the Tempest's combat experience, making them even more deadly than the original design. President Mitchell received messages from dozens of alien governments seeking new relationships with humanity. Species that had suffered under the old galactic hierarchy saw humans as potential allies who could help them gain independence from their former masters. The Terran Federation suddenly found itself at the center of a growing coalition of worlds that wanted freedom from traditional power structures. The Galactic Council attempted to maintain its authority by calling for new peace negotiations. Council Chairman Veltar sent diplomatic messages claiming that the recent battle had been a misunderstanding and that all species could coexist peacefully if humans agreed to reasonable restrictions on their military expansion. The proposal was rejected before it even reached President Mitchell's desk. Ambassador Helen Price led the human delegation to the council chambers for what everyone knew would be the last time the old system tried to assert control over humanity. She was a veteran diplomat who had spent years dealing with alien bureaucracy and understood exactly how power worked in galactic politics. Her speech to the assembled representatives became legendary and was broadcast across human space. Price explained that humanity had never sought to conquer or dominate other species. Humans simply refused to be conquered or dominated themselves. She stated that any civilization willing to treat humanity as equals would find Earth to be a reliable and valuable ally. Those who insisted on viewing humans as subjects or threats would discover that humans made very dangerous enemies. The ambassador's words carried weight because everyone in the chamber had seen the battle reports from the Stability Pact engagement. Human kinetic weapons had proven capable of destroying any known ship design, and human tactics had outmaneuvered forces with centuries of military experience. The threat was not theoretical anymore. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned THS Maelstrom, the fourth Hurricane-class battleship to enter service. The ship was even more powerful than the Tempest, with improved reactors and enhanced weapon systems that could sustain longer battles. He watched construction crews working on 6 more, identical vessels that would form the core of humanity's expanding fleet. Chief Engineer Davis had been promoted to Director of Ship Design and was working on plans for even larger vessels. The Hurricane class had proven that human engineering principles could outperform alien technology, and he wanted to push those advantages even further. His new designs called for ships that could carry entire armies and enough firepower to destroy planetary defense systems. Intelligence reports showed that several alien civilizations were attempting to develop their own kinetic weapons based on human designs. However, their efforts were failing because they lacked the industrial base and materials, science expertise that humans had developed over centuries of building things designed to survive harsh conditions and heavy use. Commander Brooks had been assigned to train new tactical officers for the expanding human fleet. She developed new combat doctrines based on lessons learned from fighting alien forces. Human ships would continue to rely on speed, surprise, and overwhelming firepower rather than trying to match alien ships in traditional fleet engagements. Zephyrian Empire, which had started the conflict by attacking human colonies, officially surrendered and requested a peace treaty. Their crystal ships had proven completely vulnerable to kinetic weapons, and they had lost over half their fleet in various engagements with human forces. The once proud warrior race now sought protection from species they had previously considered inferior. Lieutenant Colonel Hughes was promoted to general and given command of the Terran Marine Corps' expansion program. Human boarding tactics had proven devastatingly effective against alien crews who were unprepared for close-quarters combat. His Marines would serve aboard the new Hurricane-class ships and provide the capability to capture enemy vessels intact. For study. The Machine Intelligence Network, one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, sent a formal diplomatic request to establish trade relations with humanity. They were interested in human manufacturing techniques and wanted to exchange information about advanced materials and engineering methods. The proposal marked the first time an elder civilization had approached humanity as equals. President Mitchell authorized the construction of exploration fleets protected by Hurricane-class escorts. Human ships would push deeper into uncharted space to establish new colonies and search for resources needed to support the expanding fleet. The species that had once been confined to a small corner of the galaxy was preparing to become a major galactic power. Morrison received reports from scout ships operating near former Stability Pact territory. Many alien worlds were experiencing civil unrest as populations questioned why their governments had failed so completely against human forces. Some species were already forming their own alliances and requesting human military advisors to help modernize their defense forces. The Altarian Council attempted one final diplomatic initiative by offering humanity membership in a reformed galactic government. The proposal would have given humans equal representation with elder species and access to advanced alien technologies. President Mitchell politely declined, stating that humanity preferred to chart its own course among the stars. As the Maelstrom set course for the frontier, its crew prepared for missions that would expand human influence throughout the galaxy. The kinetic weapons that had shocked alien civilizations were powered down but ready to demonstrate human resolve to anyone who threatened Terran Federation interests. Morrison stood on the bridge and reflected on how quickly everything had changed. In less than a year, humanity had gone from being a minor species on the galactic periphery to a power that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. The Hurricane-class battleships had become symbols of human determination and proof that sometimes the most devastating storms came from completely unexpected directions. The galaxy was still adapting to its new reality, but one thing was certain. Humanity had arrived as a major force, and they were here to stay.